so to me, life is art. And, but think we live in a world that is it's very measured and calculated and winner loser. And so removing the binaries and kind of looking more like, and this canvas can be written any way that you want. And so owning your life and really chasing after what you deem to be your life's mission.
Welcome to The Deep Dark, a business podcast where we ask seasoned minds to excavate their history, pulling out the best insights, the hardest moments, and yes, golden epiphanies. Somewhere in the stories and laughs, we all get a little smarter and feel a little better about our own business ventures. Remember, if it didn't hurt, it doesn't count. So strap in and get ready as we plunge once again into The Deep Dark.
For those of us who are college sports fans, it's undeniable that there is a new normal. The catalyst for the new normal is NIL. Get used to it. It's here to stay. Enter Jamie Wood, the Assistant Athletic Director, NIL at Texas A&M University. Jamie tells his unique story and how his experience in education has led him to his current position. As well, Jamie shines a light and makes sense of the new college sports reality. Enjoy this episode of The Deep Dark as Jamie educates and inspires. Welcome to The Deep Dark. Welcome to The Deep Dark. We're here with Jamie Wood, the Assistant Athletic Director for NIL at Texas A&M University, and he's going to let us know his story, but also let us know how this NIL thing works and give us some insights.
I'm going to try.
Yeah, I know you're going to get it, so just buckle up. You're here on The Deep Dark and enjoy the listen. So, Jamie, tell me. Let's start your story. How did you end up at Texas A&M University?
Well, I ask myself that question often. So, first off, thank you for having me on here. Super excited to share my story. And I think the good starting point for me, I often start my story, is really just my childhood. So growing up, born and raised in Columbus, Ohio, which, that's where the Buckeyes are, right?
Sure. Yeah.
So childhood dream of mine to just be affiliated with that institution, that university. Growing up, my mom and my dad, they had me in high school. And, that was not a planned situation, right? I don't think anybody has that plan.
Right.
But, what I learned through that and kind of the challenges and the experiences of kind of navigating blended families and kids raising kids, I think I have to owe a lot of honor and gratitude to my parents and just how they navigated that. Both are happily married, families. And so I have a blended family. But I think the point about being born to high school parents is, for me, I never saw my family together. And I never lived in the same household with my mom and my dad. And I think the only time I saw unity, maybe not the only time, but the most recognizable or the time that sticks out vividly to me now is around sport. When I was running up and down the field or running up and down the basketball court or playing t-ball, I saw my family in the stands together. And so for me, I think that plays, as I look back at my life, why sport has played such a pivotal role in my life and in my upbringing. I can connect the dots there. And so through that, love for sport, a family driven and kind of having a lot of athletes in it. My siblings have played Division I sports on both sides of my family.
Really?
Yeah.
That's neat. Yeah.
It is cool. It's cool. But for me, playing at Ohio State opened my eyes to just college sports and wanting to go to the NFL was a goal of mine. Unfortunately, that did not happen. But I learned so much through my college experience and actually dabbled into the other side of the game, working in administration and interning, after being injured. And
there's life after sports.
There's life after sport.
Yeah.
But that kind of opened me up into the college administration realm and worked 6 years at Ohio State in compliance. And about 9 months in, maybe 10 months in at A&M, and I'm enjoying it in this new role of assistant AD for name, image, likeness.
Really new role. People haven't really defined what that is. I know they have for A&M for you being there, but the world, it's a little bit of a riddle.
It is.
Yeah.
I think a riddle is a good way to phrase it. And I think even within my job here, no day is the same. I love that about my job. It allows me to be creative. It allows me to problem solve. It allows me to be a solution to many people, or to try to be. And, we're still building and still growing this unit because it is so new. It's in its infant stages. But I feel like we have a good vision for what we want to do and how we can actually, amplify our student athletes' brand and opportunities while also helping build this institution, build on top of what is already great about this institution.
Well, it's a great idea to make money doing what you love, right? I can really, excuse me, I can associate with you on that. My wife is a basketball coach and an AD for a long time.
Okay.
And so our whole family, it just revolves. I wish it was football. I was a football guy. I tried to play basketball, but the coach, after I tackled 2 people, they already told my mom, yeah, he's out. He's out. But being there, and my kids have turned out great, but there is this common link between family and sports, at least in my family, that there is. And there was nothing better in my life than being able to sit in the stands and scream for my kids, right? To yell for them. And a big deal for me was to not miss one game on for either of them.
That's awesome.
And that was hard. But I tell you what, watching mom down there coaching the girls and me up in the stands and yelling like mad. And I was a really bad soccer mom. But,
hey,
mad at the rest. But yeah, I was there. And man, I can really get it. I can see it. There's a lot of love that comes from that when your parents are always showing up to support you.
There is. And I think, on my end, at least, it was cool to see them cheer. I knew it made my dad proud. I knew it made my mom proud, and it made my family, feel good because they indirectly benefit from the success that I had on the court or on the field.
Absolutely.
And in the same sense, academically, I was always a pretty decent student, and so sport just happened to be a bit more attractive to the young kid and the young boy that had a ball of energy that needed to get it out. So.
Oh, it's a great trainer for life. Definitely. I know a lot of people don't think so much anymore, but I'm telling you, it's a great trainer for life all the way through. And I'm a big advocate of. So, you're doing this NIL thing. Kind of, can you set the premise of what NIL is, so we can kind of get a grasp? Yeah.
So name, image, likeness in its purest form is really a legal concept that any regular person has had the right to protect or profit from the use of their image, anything that they create. So the example I often use is if your image is on a billboard, you had the right to, one, you either signed away your rights and gave them permission to do that, you were compensated for doing that, or you have now grounds to sue.
Right.
If that is associated with a business or a organization of some sort, for profit or nonprofit. And so in its purest form, that is now granted, that right and that privilege is now granted to our student athletes. So now on what it often looks like is being able to do deals with businesses and to have a value exchange. My marketability as an athlete at an institution like Texas A&M, like Ohio State, has value in this community. Right. I can now be a marketing asset and assist in your marketing strategies and campaigns. And maybe it's not marketing a business, maybe it's a service, or maybe it's just showing up and being a presence at a function or an event that you're facilitating in conjunction with your business, or with your best friends. You want to have Jamie Wood over to come and hang out when you're having your fantasy football draft.
Right.
That is NIL as well.
I think that people have this misconception, and the misconception is that somehow NIL is paying for play, right? But that's not correct, is it?
It's not correct. I think where we are, the reality is that there are a lot of conversations around what the financial agreement and arrangement looks like between the institution and the athlete. And in this vacuum, I guess is the best way that I kind of explain it. There's been an emergence of a third party that can essentially pay the student athlete for their rights, and oftentimes these are collectives. And because revenue sharing is not a part of the game, and athletes don't get a piece of the TV money, they don't get a piece of the Adidas money or the Nike money. They are now finding other avenues and other means to make sure that there is some compensation, and it's become kind of somewhat of a loophole that I think is why people associate it with pay for play.
Right. And it's not, but in the end, what it is that individual owns their likeness, and that they can make money off of that likeness as people use that for their marketing needs and otherwise. I mean, it's pretty cut and dried from what you're saying.
It is, and I think your market value is whatever the entity decides it is.
Mm-hmm.
And so, in the same sense of Jamie Wood, I in my eyes, I'm an old, washed up. I don't have much marketing value, but someone else might think that I do. And so, whether that is a extremely wealthy booster or an entity that just sees like, okay, I'm gonna give him gift cards instead of cash.
Sure.
There's a range of NIL arrangements that can be provided, and I think who are we to determine that that rate is not appropriate? It's really whatever that entity is willing to pay.
Right. There's been a number of going back to living here and having A&M across the street from the building. It really came home to me not too long ago when I was watching an Academy Sports and Outdoors commercial.
Mm-hmm.
And I went, okay, now I see how that's working.
Mm-hmm.
Right now I figured it out. Yeah. So that's kind of where it goes. So
you figured it out. So you have all the answers.
No. Well, actually, what came to mind was there was so much different misinformation that was floating around the world from others who think that somehow it's coming straight from the university and where that's going. When I started to see the evidence of what was out there, I started going, well, really what's happening here is it is their image, it's their likeness, but they're getting paid to be able to promote other businesses, but also, in a way, it's kind of an influencer business.
It is.
And they're making money off their brand, and that's legit, right? It is your brand. It doesn't belong to somebody else to prosper off of.
No, I mean, we've got grandma influencers, we got guys doing dances on TikTok, and we have kids opening toys and getting paid a bunch of money for doing that.
Yeah.
Now our athletes can take part in whatever that looks like for them. And oftentimes it's leveraging their social media platforms where we have guys that are coming into college with hundreds of thousands of followers. That is an asset.
Right. Absolutely.
So how do you leverage that, for good in your community, and College Station can benefit from it.
Right.
And so I question why we demonize it. And I often, what could be a challenge for some is really an opportunity. And I think if we leaned into it, and saw it for what it can truly be and how it can benefit not only the student athlete but the person on the other end. I think we all would benefit from kind of, again, the value exchange.
Right.
You have to do something in exchange for something.
Well, at the end, your brand is an asset. Now, I know that it doesn't look that way on your taxes, but at the same time, it's really all you have in the end, right? So as you start to look through that, it's taken me a while to put my arms around. Wow, I really loved, quote unquote, we talked about this, the amateur athlete, right? And the benefits that you're getting to go to school and everything else. But the other side is, I've had good friends that went to school on scholarship, and it was a starving endeavor, right? It wasn't as if, and I understand that all students, it's a starving endeavor. I eat ramen too, right? I mean, I get that.
I still eat ramen.
But if you could get to the point to where, you figured out how to make money off of your, your brand, well, we're a brand company. I get that. That's a big part of every bit of it.
Most definitely.
So tell me about this, as we talked about, tell me about your thought process on how you communicate this when either a new recruit's coming in or we've had some for a while. NIL's been around since what, like July 2021, June 2021, when the NCAA went to the Supreme Court on that thing, right?
For sure.
So as that happens, how do you communicate? What are you doing day to day that helps the student athlete figure that out?
Yeah, so we have 16 sport programs here at Texas A&M, ranging from your equestrian all the way to what we know of football, American football, and being accessible to those coaches has been valuable. There's been some coaches that embrace me and kind of lean into me being an asset or a part of their support group and their team of people. We have nutritionists, we have sports psychologists, we have all of these resources.
Right.
Oftentimes when a recruit comes to campus, it's kind of showing what you have and what you offer. July 1st of 2021, NIL came into the mix, but I didn't start until May of 2023.
Okay.
So for the first 2 years of NIL, the state law really kind of, handcuffed the institutions.
Does each state have their own set of laws?
Yeah, it's fragmented. That's a whole nother ball of wax where there's fragmented legislation on the state level. There's the interpretive flexibility that each institution might have, how they interpret that law and those rules. There's high school NIL, and then there are multiple federal legislation that's being proposed and being discussed. If you're from this area, you've saw Ted Cruz and kind of Ross having that discussion. So again, adding to the confusion, the frustration, the where are we at, what are we doing? But I think at its core, when I am talking with recruits, when I'm talking to student athletes and parents, it's really teaching them life skills. I think the days of back when I was a student athlete, I was at Ohio State with Coach Tressel, Coach Luke Fickell, and Urban Meyer. So I saw 3 different philosophies, but the only reason that I didn't have Coach Tressel the entire way through is because we had the tattoo incident where we had a couple of my teammates that received tattoos in exchange for, I think they sold some merchandise and some gears, which is still not allowed while you're a current student athlete, but that free tattoo could have been an arrangement. It could have been an NIL deal in exchange for them doing something. So to kind of just see where we were and where we're at now is pretty ironic, and
it is
to think about guys driving in Lamborghinis and getting some of the numbers that are being thrown around. It's been quite a whirlwind.
It is. So backing up a little bit as we go through there, as you were going, you finished playing football, you're educated. You want to go through the admin track. What made you decide to go to the NIL side of the house when there's so many different ways of going?
Yeah. That's a great question. For me, my career at Ohio State, I spent 11 years of my life as a student athlete, as an intern, and then 2 years outside of graduating and finishing my eligibility. I reached back out to who's now Gene Smith, who's there for 19 years, longtime AD. Actually, Ross is about to take over for him. Been a big mentor of mine as a black man in this industry. There's been very few, but I would say he's been on he's the Mount Rushmore of college athletics. And so having a resource like him, a mentor like him, and someone that has always been accessible and available, I reached out to him, and I just screenshotted this, and I'm going to give it to him on his retirement. But I reached out to him. I was getting ready to take another job after working a sales gig for 2 years, selling toilet paper, chemicals, and cleaning equipment. And it wasn't a passion of mine. I didn't feel purpose led. And for me, sports has played that pivotal role. I wanted to be what I didn't have, or be a Gene Smith to somebody else. And so in reaching out to him, we met a week after I emailed him. It's a busy man. I wasn't going to. Fortunate enough, he sat down with me, and in that meeting was who became my boss.
Wow.
And so it was essentially, thanks for reaching out. I told him I wanted to get my master's and get it paid for. And I worked my job, started my master's program in 2018, and 6 years of compliance at Ohio State. But then transitioning, I knew I needed to grow. I needed to go to grow. That was one of the hard conversations where on one end I felt like, why wouldn't you keep me? But he, had enough foresight of this profession that he said, Jamie, you know this place inside out. And this place, you've been great for us and you've done an exceptional job, but in order to grow, you need to go. And so we had that conversation, and NIL was an opportunity. I met Ross and the staff after a cross country meet. As I got elevated into sport administrator role, so I oversaw a track program while working a dual role in compliance.
Wow! And
I came out for cross country meet here, met the executive staff, sent a handwritten thank you letter to each one of them, just thanking them for the hospitality and for the experience. And 5 months later, I got a call and asking if I would be interested in this position. And I wanted the challenge. I wanted to grow.
And it is a challenge.
It is that. It's been every bit of that. But I feel like God has me here for a reason, and I'm here on a mission. And it's not a finite goal. I think it's an infinite goal. And I really believe in the value of infinite targets, that you're more cause driven than trying to drive revenue and bottom lines. That's a part of it, but it's way bigger than that for me.
It's got to be huge because I think I saw somewhere the other day that which I think it was A&M's law school, actually has a direction now for just NIL, right? And a certificate program as law school goes or something. And I forget exactly what it is, so don't quote me. But it is a little bit of a legal education that you've had to undergo yourself and self-teach, haven't you?
Definitely. I would say compliance at Ohio State prepared me for this role. It made me an attractive candidate. Had I not gone the route that my understanding of compliance as a student athlete was they're the feds. And I wanted to stay far from the feds, and especially having gone through the major infractions case, the tattoo scandal, where compliance was a big part of that, and they tightened up. They actually added staff. So it's kind of cool to see, really, we had the largest compliance office in the country. We had 15 people at Ohio State, and there's some pretty heavy hitters that probably could be running offices at other places that Gene saw enough value in protecting the institution, which is a big part of their job. It's not just enforcing and getting people in trouble. Yeah. It's like hiring lawyers. I want valuable and knowledgeable lawyers to represent my business if I value my asset and my organization. And so I got to play fake law, is what I like to call it when you talk about NCAA bylaws.
Right. It's funny. So my generation, we see every bit of what happens with recruiting and with other things through a different lens, right? And we see it through the SMU death penalty, right? So every time you hear recruiting or violation or a coach is in trouble or
it's Texas,
man, it all goes back to the gold Trans Am at Texas A&M University and how SMU met their demise, which really, I know they're doing better at football now. It's been a long time, but that destroyed a football program for decades.
Changed the trajectory of that program.
It did. It did.
Maybe the institution
as a whole.
It's not just football.
That's right. And so we see it through that lens. And so then what happens is us, like I said, I told you, we're a neophyte in this subject. But as we start looking at it and there's confusion and it's changing, and how do you navigate that? And if it's that way to us, right? And we have this background of seeing the destruction of a program, and there's fear there. I can't even imagine being a young man or woman coming out of high school and having to try to navigate those waters. And I know they probably don't know the SMU story. I'll get that.
They probably don't.
Yeah.
Unless they're from Texas, their parents probably talk to them about it.
Maybe. I don't know. There's people around here who don't even know why we have a problem with Texas. But, as that goes, not a problem, but in good competitive spirit. But as that goes, it's probably, but it can be confusing even still, right? So what are you doing for the players? How does your job directly touch them on a regular basis?
What I like to say to them is that, one, there are a lot of third parties that are jumping into this game. We have agents, financial advisors. We have what they like to say is sharks swimming in the water. That now have a permissible or they now have permission to kind of step into this space and potentially offer value. The challenge that I see is that these young men and young women don't know how to really evaluate the people that they surround themselves with from a business standpoint. You're asking them to play a game they've never played, just like probably throwing you on a horse where you probably wouldn't know how to do what our equestrian program does.
Oh,
so
yeah.
It's a different arena. And so my conversations with them is, hey, you're not an expert in this space. Many of you probably have some knowledge, especially if you've had a sibling or had someone that's navigated this, but maybe you do need a team, or maybe we need to shift how we are educating them to help prepare them to make informed decisions about the people that say they want to do business and they will add value. So I'll use an agent for an example. Many of the agents of old are waiting for the transition from high school or from college to pro. They want 3% of whatever that million is. Now they can have representation on an NIL marketing front. And many of those agents are the same agents that put on the hat of player agent. And so they're signing the talent. They're it's the same guy that has Patrick Mahomes. It's the same guy that has whatever.
Their market just really grew, right?
They did.
Yeah,
they did.
Sure.
But are they truly trying to market you, and does an agent in LA know College Station?
Mm-hmm.
And are they going to tend to your needs, your desires in this space? Do they know you? What did they know you? Ask the question, why me?
Mm-hmm.
And so it's empowering the athlete to own this process. That person works for you. You're hiring them. And unfortunately, they've not been in a position where they've negotiated, or they've really been in an empowered position to kind of own the process. You've been told what to do growing up. You've been told to do by your coaches. So it's almost a muscle that they've not trained.
Wow.
And so a lot of our education is around empowering them to make informed decisions. I don't tell them what to do, but I want you to list it all out and be able to pick and establish a process for your decision making.
We have a value here at Fidelis in which we say, we talk to clients about this when they come in, and many have been burnt, and we tell them, one of our main things other than do no harm is don't trust a wizard. Don't ever trust a wizard. So if somebody comes in as a snake oil salesman trying to tell you that, if you give them X amount of money and you have 1 million impressions, that's going to turn into X amount of dollars in your pocket, is not true. It's the same thing, because at the end, salespeople will be salespeople, right?
For sure.
They're going to.
That's their goal, right?
That's their goal.
Make the sale.
That's right. Because that's how they make their money. But sometimes it's a disregard for the person themselves that you're trying to help.
100%. And I think a lot of this is just a lot being thrown at them. I mean, school and sport takes up so much of these student athletes' time. And then you have to carve out time to have a social life. And if you have family, like how the time management piece has been the biggest challenge. And then the vagueness of content creation. And teaching them like those strategies. What does your brand look like? And I think brand is more, interpersonal communication skills is probably where we need to start. How do you shake a hand? How do you look a person in the eye? How do you build rapport? How do you steward? Different than our development people and our fundraisers. Yeah, they don't say, "Hey, day one, give me your money." No different than, I always use the analogy of like dating. It's like you don't ask that other person to marry on day one, or maybe you shouldn't, but the process of courting an individual or a business is really the approach that I would love for them to learn. Right. And so if they walk away with just those skills, they're transferable, and it's not just about NIL deals.
We always say, look good, sound great, drive revenue. Right. those things go together. But it's so funny, and I'm using my experience, never having yours, but we know that brand-driven companies, and I'm going to go so far as even to say brand-driven executives make the difference in revenue growth. And there is this tertiary effect that happens. There's a whole lot of things that marketing analytics, KPIs, that we can tell you is going to happen, and that we can prophesy how that's going to work out based upon history and the way that's looking. But at the end, when especially companies that have a certain price tag per year per client, it's the brand that makes the difference. Nike. Nike. But you also see the opposite happen. Companies make bad decisions in their brand, and you can never equate that bad decision and how revenue drop. But we know those two things go together.
They go hand in hand.
They go hand in hand. So, brand's a big deal, and young people having to discover and how to push a brand is a tall mountain.
It is. But I believe in our education system. So we talk a lot about NIL, and a lot of people look at it as like NIL or education. Why can't it be an and? Right. Why can't we shift some of our education tactics and courses? And thankfully, Mays Business School is, we're working through building out something like that. And I think there's so many like tangible business acumen that can be kind of garnered through NIL activity. And if you use NIL to catch them on the hook, right, there's so much more that you can expose them to if we take time and if we focus our efforts.
It's learning to be an entrepreneur if you do it right.
Entrepreneurship.
That's it. It's what it is. And you may not be scaling, and you may not have to worry about a number of things at that point in time, because it is a lot like being a influencer. But on the other side, you even learn those basics, and it'll just go with you as you go.
100%.
And we were talking about Alex earlier and how he was able to do it and is still doing it, right?
Pre-NIL.
Yep, pre-NIL, and then in this pivot that he's made in his life, Alex Caesar, the way that he's pivoted this lately is that it's purely based upon who he is as a person to overcome what we say here in marketing is there's usually two big problems. Either it's a trust problem or it's a invisibility problem, right? And so if we can solve those two problems, usually the rest is easy to overcome as well. And so solving that trust, solving for everybody around you, and that's what your brand has to be. And as we push that, for executives or companies, that works great. Same thing I can see happening for these young people in NIL.
For sure. I think if they get NIL deals, and they make X amount of money, men and women, great. But I think the way that I want to approach this is from a more holistic approach. That's my philosophy is how do we help them discover who they are beyond ball? Because there are way more people that leverage the ball side of you or the sports side of you, because you'll garner a following for that. Just like SportsCenter has X amount of viewers, but SportsCenter is not what I want to watch 24/7. I'd rather have Netflix. I'd rather have some options. And so if your channel, if your social media page is all football pics and lacrosse pictures and sports pictures, then you're going to target an audience that and brands that associate with that. But you have more in you that you probably just don't even know. It's never been validated. You've not necessarily explored it. And you didn't think it was going to garner following because you just want to show your highlight tapes. And it's no, you have things in your story and in your life that you've lived through and that you've accomplished that would be worth sharing in a creative and a strategic way.
Absolutely. So what's the next steps? So you've been here a number of years. You have this going. Of course, this is the first year that I can remember that the portal and its connection to NIL, or so it seems, has exploded. I mean, okay, so I am a little bit of a super freak when it comes to sports and football.
That's true. That now.
And as I'm watching this and I'm reading this and I'm going, how many commits and how many and thinking about how coaches are much more akin, but with a lot more problems to having to deal with really a football league as opposed to college football. It's just part of the animal, and we're going to have to adapt, right? But trying to look at that and say, well, what is next? What do you see coming, and how this is going to be handled?
Yeah. So you mentioned something that I think is important is, the X's and O's good old ball coach is not what you see nowadays. And if you are that, the thing I like to say is hire who you're not. And so maybe you have a staff member that can be the CEO type that can kind of support you where you're not, maybe you're not ready to navigate a business, but it essentially is a corporation. It is a business endeavor. And recruiting, the questions are around what are your NIL resources and support? Do you have a Jamie? Do you have a space, a creative space, which is what we're developing and should be open here in August?
I'd love to hear more about that in a minute.
Yeah, for sure. No, it's like, what are you doing for NIL? And that's not just how much money am I going to get. That's the support. Parents want to know that their young people are learning. And fortunate enough, our state law here in Texas requires at least 5 hours of some mandatory education that is adjacent to NIL, financial literacy, debt management, time management. And so they want to know that. And it's I've been a part of every conversation with the recruits that we've brought in thus far. And I've been fortunate that Coach Elko and his staff has found value in what I've shared and what I've proposed as it relates to how we're supporting our student athletes in this space.
Yeah, I think that's a big part because, one of the big things that was happening within this new world that we live in, it's exciting, right? It's exciting. We can't say it's exciting.
Very
it's
much
not all,
so.
It is. It may bring some anxiety to some, but it's exciting.
Anxiety. Yeah. That might be one of the things that it brings up. But
yeah, there was I won't go there. But it had to do with saving, but I'll leave that alone. But as it goes, I think that there is a lot of value. And this is again hard to do for a young person. I don't know if I could have handled it when I was that age. When
I was struggling with what I had on my plate.
Right, exactly. Hey, by the way, not only are you going to go play ball, not only are you in equestrian, not only are you swimming or playing basketball, And not only do you have some really tough classes from, a really great university, there's also this extra stuff that we're going to want to have you learn. And man, that's a lot, especially, and we hire a lot of young people around here.
Sorry.
And the only real way, we talked about this earlier, is to gain business acumen is, boots on the ground, is actually doing it and figuring it out. So to have somebody like yourself that's helping people figure that out from there's nothing in it for you, your salary is already covered over here, and I'm not going to make 3% off of your take, is a real value. It's tough.
I would think it is. Depending on who the third party is and how influential that person is, because we've got family members that are now, posing as, the NIL expert. And because NIL can be contextualized in so many different ways,
right,
and they don't know who and how and what value they bring, it just sounds good. There's a lot of emotional decisions being made. And not that that's wrong. I think it's just emotion and logic. We need to also bring it all together, because you do need to trust whoever you choose to have, helping you in this space. And that's something that I want to establish, and being visible, being accessible, building out a team of folks that can support me, because I can only do so much as a single individual.
Right.
And so there's plans to enhance and build into this space on the institutional side, so that I'm not running around with my, I say my hair on fire, but I don't have any of that.
I'm with you. The other side that I think we spoke about earlier before we came on, and I don't want to run too long here, but there is another part to this where I think of Buzz, right? And I think of the basketball team. And he is an incredible leader, right? I mean, that dude.
100%. He does a great job with his content too.
Doesn't he?
He
does and teaching and do it. But what you don't see is, due to the current circumstances with NIL, is people jump ship, right? You don't see a whole lot of people entering into doing that for basketball. There is a part of it that, in a holistic feel, the reason why you do go to school is because of the people that will influence you, of the culture that you're going to be in, of not only that, but what's going to happen after ball, right? What's going to happen after, or, let's hope, God help us if it does get injured,
right?
And you can never play again.
Which happens to many.
It happens to many. What does the rest of that road look like when I've got to figure out something new? And those are those intangibles that you get out of there. I know that's hard for a young person to grasp. I would have been in the same boat, but man, what a gift that would be if somebody actually taught me how to make money as I was getting out.
For sure. And I think that's another benefit, a good thing about NIL is it the life skills component, and approaching it from a holistic manner allows you to kind of, intertwine and marry life and the lessons that you can learn through it, through business, through NIL, through partnerships, through relationships, which we know, and I think you would agree, relationships run the world. And so helping them understand that, behind every business are people, and we're more similar than we are different. And so how do you find those commonalities, whether it be your major or your hometown or where your mom used to work, or your local community has watched you grow up. And so whether that's Columbus, Ohio, or, deep South Texas, where you say you're from, there are businesses that and people that either work at a business or own a business that have watched you since you were a little guy playing high school football Friday nights.
Right.
And so for a lot of the conversations, that's where it starts. And then as you transition to whatever college campus you go to, there's a local market there. And so Columbus, Ohio is a college metropolitan. There's Fortune 500 companies. There's Chase. There's Express. There's Nationwide Insurance. There's Chipotle. And we don't have that in our local market as it relates to their headquarters. But what we do have is we got Fuego Tacos. We have, and then we have Aggies all over the state of Texas that are CEOs. I just learned that the CEO of Southwest Airlines is an Aggie. So maybe, yes, he donates and he gives to the foundation and 12th Man Foundation, but maybe there's some flights that could be arranged for some of our student athletes who have families who are recruiting globally and nationally.
Right.
And so there's just so many ways to connect, and I don't want it to stop at just put me on your billboard.
Mm-hmm.
Teach me how your business works. So maybe you do cut me a deal and a check. Maybe you do put me in your promotional material, but then maybe we also, in the contract and in the agreement that we create, you arrange a job shadowing opportunity where a weekend out of that I rarely get, some weekend in the off season, I come out to the headquarters and I learn for a weekend, and now I have something I can add to my resume and experience, because I can't do internships like your normal student athlete population. I can't leave for the summer because I'm training the entire summer.
Mm-hmm.
And so to me, that is where the intersection of career development, personal development, NIL, it can all work together. And I think in the end, everybody wins. If we have a more well-developed individual beyond the well-developed player, like that is what is winning to me. And I think you can have both. And I think the ideology that you need to be in the facility 24 hours, I don't believe in that.
Right.
I do think you need to put time in and extra beyond what is required.
Mm-hmm.
But, Coach, how can we reinforce? How can you support? How can you champion some of the other things that this community and this campus can provide them, and this former student population that we rant and rave about?
Right. I haven't even thought about that in-kind transfer of the different things the company can do in kind for other things. It doesn't have to be cutting a check. It could be that's the thought.
Yeah,
I like that.
And we're building programming to kind of starting to tap into that, to educate, to facilitate those things. And if that's not an appetite for you and that's not something you want to do, you don't have to. But know that is you can actually engage with this young person and not just throw money. So to me, again, the value exchange there. If you actually get to be a part of this person's learning and the reason that they, like, maybe it starts as an NIL deal, and maybe at some point they are the CEO of that same company that started as an NIL deal.
Right.
That to me is like, man, athletes are great talent for hire. They have all the skills. We talk about it.
Sure.
Let's do it.
What is it? So let's say that company does want to do that. They do want to get involved. How do they start? How does the company start to get involved in athletes?
Well, I think it comes in a variety of different ways. You have the collective who kind of works with certain athletes, but I always say is I'm the facilitator. I'm throwing assists all the time.
Got it.
And so I think a good starting point is our institution and me. We have an intake form. We are trying to get out and communicate on a more frequent basis because I think it's just knowledge and awareness.
Right.
But depending on what your interests are, if you want A&M marks, you have to go the sponsorship route. So there's like layers of complexity baked into it, but my job is to help remove those barriers or those perceived barriers in the form of educating and kind of helping them understand how you need to work through it based on your interest in what you want to do.
That's a great answer. That's a great answer. I think that a lot of people are confused, right, of how that works. Do they have to go straight to the, or do they? Yeah, there are different routes in there, and so this is not as South Texas would say. This is not as big of a rodeo as we probably as it seems. Yeah,
and that's my job. Like I said, education is number one. But how can I help you accomplish what you want? If you want to engage in NIL and you want to do it in whatever way that looks, we can find out how. The what, usually we can get there and do it, but it's the how is the more complicated part and the complex part in this era of NIL.
I think we've gone a little long, but I want to give you final comments, right?
Okay.
What is it
we talked a lot about NIL.
Well, it is a lot of it went there.
It did.
It's obvious that you're passionate about it. I think your story's in there too, though, for sure. But as we're going, what do you want to close with? What do you want the world to?
I think for me, just based off of the conversation that we had, is these young people, which I think we forget because they're big in stature, they're elite in their respective sports, whatever that sport may be.
Right.
That they're still learning, they're still growing, and they're coming from all different types of backgrounds and really jumping into whatever A&M provides them and is willing to offer them. And so how can we rally around helping them and supporting them? And I think the holistic development piece is like the more than an athlete notion. To me is something I'm extremely passionate about, and I think having to come to reckon with that through injury sooner than I thought has really driven my passion to really help them understand who they are beyond sport.
And I love that, but I also kind of like want to go to the deep dark here for just a minute. Without NIL, let's just take that off the table. Jamie, it's hard. Yeah, it's hard because you're living it, right?
Yeah, and I'm in a place where I'm not. This isn't home for me, and so I dove deep into work.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's a hard job. I get it. What is your number one driver? What is it that NIL aside, you've had athletic career, you've had some other things you've done. The end game, what is your driver in where do you want to be in that end game, and what does that look like for you? Because it's obvious that you're dynamic and you have all kinds of capabilities, but what is that? What does that look like? What's that vision?
For me, I think I'm still working through that, to be honest, and devoting 11 years of my life to this profession, which is bureaucratic in its own unique way, and preaching entrepreneurship to these student athletes is really sparking my entrepreneurial spirit. And the very thing that I'm telling them to embrace and to add to their repertoire, I have yet to really jump into an entrepreneurial space. And I think with my life experiences, with my career experiences, consulting comes to mind, being a coach.
It's kind of a Dr. Heal Thyself moment.
Yes.
Practice what you preach.
It is all of that, all of that. And I think life, like I am the subject matter expert of my life. And I have a unique perspective of my life that nobody else has. And so how can I help with the lessons that I've learned, the experiences that I've had, the people that I know? How can I help other people better understand themselves and understand their stories and what drives them? Because in understanding that about myself, it's kind of opened my eyes to really all the opportunities that life presents you. And I think we're created to create.
Sure.
And so that creativity may be a spreadsheet. It may be, content.
Yeah.
It may be just being able to communicate and articulate different things to different people. Or it may be football, because no one person runs up and down the field the same. No track athlete jumps the same. And so to me, life is art. And, but I think we live in a world that is very, it's very measured and calculated and winner loser. And so removing the binaries and kind of looking more like, and this canvas can be written any way that you want. And so owning your life and really chasing after what you deem to be your life's mission. And I think for me, my faith is a big part of that, but it's really rooted in loving people and helping them see the best in themselves and seeing themselves in the way God sees them.
Awesome. Well, thanks for your time.
I appreciate
it.
Thank you, Chris.
I do. This is really awesome. Great story, and thank you for what you're doing. And I have no doubt that you'll conquer this other part. There.
Man, we'll see.
Yeah.
We'll see, man. I'm just along for the ride, man. I'm surrendering to really what God has it planned for me, and I think the more I try to embrace it and kind of control it, I get frustrated.
Absolutely.
And things slip by the wayside.
It's all in His timing, man.
It is. It is. And it'll unfold.
It will.
Yeah.
It will.
Appreciate your time.
All right. Thanks.